All right, you guys, we have got to do it today. I owe it to you. I promised, because what the heck is going on with the Justin Baldoni lawsuit? Is it over? The amount of you that were tagging me being like, Candace, we need an episode. And I was like, no, I cannot give up the last week of my maternity leave, because there was news that the lawsuit had been dropped, and suddenly Blake Lively's team was coming out there trotting out a win for feminists. They were like, we did this for women everywhere. Blech. Literally, it made me want to throw up when I read that. Don't worry, today I've got you covered, and it's going to make perfect sense. I can't believe you guys missed. It was so obvious what was happening there. Plus, we got to get to Tyler Perry, because also what the heck is going on there? A gay sexting scandal. I am shocked, but not for the same reasons that you are shocked. So let's discuss it. And good news, guys. After 2 years of consistently bombing Palestinian children and bombing every hospital in Gaza, Israel now claims that bombing hospitals is monstrous because Iran just did it to them. So I love it. Let's get started. Okay, guys, there was definitely online panic. Tons of panic. Understandably so. Like I said, Blake was out there doing the absolute most, claiming victory. Oh, I've been vindicated. I'm a wonderful person. Just forget about everything that you guys read. Her PR agents were so desperate to make the public believe that they really had delivered a victory. And the headlines were very confusing because it said the lawsuit was dropped. Good job on her PR firm. Obviously, that is not true. But it is true that the defamation portion of the lawsuit was dropped entirely. So the first thing you need to understand is we got to get back to the beginning of this situation. It's a lot. It's a lot to remember, which means that there's a lot that you can forget. When Justin Baldoni and co. initially filed a lawsuit against Blake Lively, there were actually 2 lawsuits that were happening. Remember, the New York Times, they had sued for $200 million. He was suing the New York Times for libel, false light, invasion of privacy, promissory fraud, and breach of implied in fact contract. That's very important to remember that, okay? Separately, he sued Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Leslie Sloan PR and her PR firm Vision PR for $400 million, and they brought against them 7 causes of action. So negligent interference with prospective economic advantage, intentional interference with prospective economic advantage, intentional interference with contractual relationships, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and then false light and invasion of privacy, defamation, and civil extortion. So the repeated claims in those 2 suits, across both of those lawsuits, New York Times and Blake Lively and co., were defamation, false light, and invasion of privacy. And so that is why, right off the bat, it should be perfectly understandable. If you have been a committed listener to the Candace show, if you have been following this lawsuit through me, then you should understand that ruling and why they dropped those parts of the lawsuit and then dropped the lawsuit in its entirety against the New York Times. Because, I'll tell you why, it's perfectly understandable, because of history, because of American history. Do you guys remember that episode where I made it very clear to you guys that the New York Times is an extension? It is a publishing arm of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, right? They have been an arm of the CIA probably since its inception, to be honest, but we know at least since Operation Mockingbird. We did an episode where I discussed this with you. I said, this is really important, especially you guys that are in my book club. You know, this is not a conspiracy theory, okay? If you've read Chaos, you know my obsession with the 1960s in America. The CIA was just going crazy, getting away with all sorts of things, murdering people, sexual blackmail, you name it. But the big thing was the shooting of JFK, right? In broad daylight, next to his wife, being driven in a car, JFK was shot. And the CIA then did the absolute most to shut down conversation, conspiracy, as they called it. In fact, that is when they started coining that term, conspiracy theorist, was to get people to stop asking questions about this shooting. Probably because they were covering their own crime, okay? And one of the things that they did to try to settle down the public, to try to control public perception, was that they put journalists and entire publications on their payroll. That is what Operation Mockingbird was. It was the CIA reaction to all of the obvious questions and the quote unquote conspiracies that were shaping regarding what the heck happened on that day in Dallas when a sitting president was shot by our dear friend and ally, maybe. I don't know. Just saying. Okay, so I'm just taking you back through the episode. I showed you guys this Wikipedia excerpt, and it says plainly here that in 1975, they were looking backwards at Operation Mockingbird. The Church Committee Congressional Investigations revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. And elsewhere, it tells us that one of the people that contributed was Arthur Solzenberg, who heads up the New York Times, right? Arthur, his family has owned the New York Times. It was initially founded by Adolph Ochs, who was his father-in-law, and Arthur Hayes Sulzberger basically was working for the CIA. And that became abundantly clear in an article that Rolling Stone did, unveiling everybody who was working with the CIA Times and essentially, like I said, telling us what to think. And I want to say this to you guys, why that's so relevant, and you should really remember this going forward. It is quite literally, and forget how you feel about Trump, it is quite literally fake news. Maybe it's not even fake news, it's state news, which implies that it's fake. It's the government trying to make sure they can control the population, to make sure that you guys are not doing anything out of its control. And the best way to do that is to make people think that it is a token of their education to read the New York Times. When you think about the New York Times, you do think about that, right? You're like, oh yes, I read this person reads the New York Times daily. They'll even put this in movies and in shows, like the whole idea of somebody opening a newspaper, the thud of the newspaper, somebody reading the newspaper. It is represented as a symbol of someone's education. I remember, because I majored in journalism in college, that we were taught to go to sources that could be trusted. And we were quite literally learning that as good journalists, we could trust and rely upon the New York Times when conducting any research, and that we should aspire to work for the New York Times. But the reality is, it's a fact that they are an arm of the state, and they are very powerful. And they became more powerful around this exact same time when JFK was shot, because the CIA had to make sure that they were untouchable, so that they could go out and they could lie about people, but also making sure that they wouldn't be sued for defamation. So you guys know what happened? Okay. They created in 1964 the actual malice standard for politicians and celebrities. That effectively means, just so you understand, that journalists can lie about celebrities, as they very much did in the matter of Justin Baldoni, and it is nearly impossible for those celebrities and politicians to win against them, even if they can prove this is a lie. Everything you said about me is not true. They'll come back and they'll say, well, yes, the journalist lied, but I don't think they had any malice when they lied. There was no actual malice here. They didn't act in reckless disregard for the truth, which is a nonsense height that you have to scale. It makes entirely no sense. Essentially, they're asking, yeah, we know that they lied, but did they really, really, really know that it was false and try to hurt you? If not, oh well. Now, that standard was quite literally created by the New York Times. The standard was that case that was the landmark case was New York Times versus Sullivan. Again, dating back to that time around JFK getting shot. They needed the New York Times to be untouchable. So what happened in 1964 regarding this case was, the story essentially is the New York Times ran this article, okay? And it was actually an advertisement that it ran. And it was pertaining to civil rights protests that were happening at the time, right? 1964, you think about the civil rights unrest that was going on in this country. Those of you that are in my book club, you know a lot of those civil rights protests were inorganic. It was actually our government, which they do is that they try to foment racial unrest for specific reasons. We don't need to get into all of that right now, but just know that this case, the New York Times, what essentially happened was they ran an advertisement. And in this advertisement, I want you to really understand how absurd it was. The full-page advertisement claimed that in Montgomery, Alabama, there were these student civil rights protesters, okay? And that they had a clash with the police, and that the Alabama police locked these students on a college campus in a dining hall with a padlock, and that the police tried to starve them into submission. That truckloads of Alabama police had descended, and these brave civil rights protesters, these students, were resisting in a cafeteria, and the police said, then you just starve, and you'll die until you do what we want. And they did it with a padlock. Woo, that creates quite imagery. So if you're this elite reading the newspaper, you're going, oh my dear, we must get behind these civil rights protests. These poor students are being starved to death in the racist South. The only thing is that it never happened. That was made up. It was just completely made up. And so the Montgomery commissioner of public affairs was this guy named L.B. Sullivan. He's like, excuse me, New York Times, this is crazy. You can't just be out here saying that we're locking students with padlocks. I'm going to sue you for libel. And I'm going to cite the obvious fact that this lie that we would starve students to get what we wanted because you're trying to foment racial unrest in America has severely impacted my reputation because I am the man, L.B. Sullivan, that is responsible for the police department. Like, what are you doing? And guess what? He sued them on a local level and he won his case. And he didn't have to prove anything other than the fact that they had lied. And the New York Times said, that isn't good. So they appealed. And then he beat them again on the state level. They said, yeah, no, he won about $500,000 in damages. And they're like, no, it's crazy. You can't just lie and make something up. So the New York Times said, okay, state rights, but what about at the tippity top? Let's take this to the Supreme Court. New York Times versus Sullivan. And guess what? The government sided with the government, meaning the New York Times at the time was working with the CIA, and they created a new standard, actual malice, a unanimous decision that, you know what, it is First Amendment. So it is also necessary for publications to be allowed to lie in the interest of the public because we don't want to get in the way of free speech, and they need to hold these public officials' feet to the fire, and they'll be afraid to do so if they can't lie. That's crazy, but that is what the actual malice standard is. Like, you have to be able to somehow prove they acted in full reckless disregard for the truth, which I would say, not fact-checking whether or not students were locked in a cafeteria with a padlock would be acting in reckless disregard of the truth. But what am I? What do I know? Exactly nothing against the federal government. So the moral of the story here is that the actual malice standard was literally developed to protect the New York Times. They have been corrupt forever. The New York Times is effectively the publishing arm of the CIA, which means that Justin Baldoni just tried to sue the CIA, okay? Big mistake. Nobody wins against the New York Times, okay? They have told egregious lies for years against celebrities, against politicians that have, of course, led to real-world consequences, but they always get away with it. Like, we were just looking, me and the producers, like, who wins against them? Sarah Palin just lost against them. Skylar, you were just talking about the story where even an Ohio Supreme Court justice sued them for an egregious lie, and he actually won. So you have think about this, a Supreme Court judge has even sued the New York Times for their lies. And even though he won, he wasn't awarded anything for damages. So I don't know what kind of a win that is. They were just like, okay, fine, we're lying, we're getting caught lying again. But they get away with it because the goal is to shape public opinion. And by then the damage is done. And the CIA knows that they can always protect them in court. Now, this becomes especially relevant when you remember the old story that we covered, okay? The headline that Blake Lively had engaged the CIA alum, okay, the crisis PR firm, in her battle against Justin Baldoni. And we went, I said, that's very interesting that she did that. That Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are moving to hire a PR crisis manager. His name was Nick Shapiro. He was formerly of the CIA. He worked for the CIA's he was the CIA's deputy chief of staff, and he worked beneath their director, John Brennan, who's implausibly corrupt. Why did they engage this firm? Because, guys, I hate to tell you this, America's ghetto and corrupt. Like, that's reality. It's ghetto and corrupt. Like, that is the reality. And the New York Times is going to be the New York Times, and they know that they're going to be protected. And so the best way to think about this case is that the Justin Baldoni hit piece originated from the CIA-protected New York Times. So on June 10th, I wasn't shocked when Judge Lehman did what always happens in these matters pertaining to the New York Times/CIA lawsuits. He entirely dismissed the lawsuit against the New York Times, and then he necessarily had to dismiss any of the repeated claims that were in Blake Lively's filings. Because you can't say, okay, the New York Times is not guilty, but Blake and Ryan are. You have to gut it from their lawsuit as well. And that's exactly what he did. On June 10th, he ruled that Justin Baldoni cannot sue Blake Lively after dismissing the New York Times one, that he cannot sue Blake Lively for defamation over the claims that she made in her legal filing because the allegations made are exempt from libel. He also ruled that that Baldoni could not sue her for extortion under California law. Now, the extortion piece would have also dragged the New York Times into it, because don't forget, regarding the extortion, they would have forced the New York Times to go into discovery, because the claim was that Blake Lively wanted the rights to the movie and she was extorting them, saying that you give me what I want or I will go public with claims of sexual harassment, allegedly. And so in order for them to prove that, they would have subpoenaed messages with her. And who was she going to go public with? The New York Times. So everything the judge just did, in my view, was to protect the CIA. That is why everyone was so surprised. I was like, no, this is how it works. If you pay attention, it is, you cannot sue the CIA. You cannot win against the government. And there are so many public cases that have happened. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, he was walking free, okay? And we learned from Acosta, from Secretary Acosta, once Trump had appointed him, he said, I was told to let Jeffrey Epstein walk free. Even when this man was caught with crimes against minors, he was being told that he was an asset and he was to let him free, and he listened. So do not ever operate under the delusion that there is not a hand that works above judges. It simply does. And that hand is the federal government, the deep state. Now, after gutting those portions of the lawsuit, which are to be expected, the judge then said, okay, now what's left here are your claims, which have nothing to do with the New York Times, okay? And he said, and which is the, essentially the tortious interference, the contractual stuff, and he is allowing them to now revise the lawsuit and represent it gutted, because he is saying it's okay for you to pursue these different claims pertaining to whether or not Lively breached or interfered with her contract. And that is what they're doing right now. They're going to have to resubmit their lawsuit with anything pertaining to the New York Times or that could potentially implicate the New York Times removed from it. Like I said, America is ghetto and corrupt, and that's just the reality that we all should understand by now. But in a fun update and a fun twist, and I did not think we were going to get this, and I'm surprised that we did, Judge Lehman has ruled yes on the Taylor Swift text messages. Now, we went back and forth on this, showing you that she was fighting, and I mean Blake Lively and Ryan had been fighting tooth and nail not to allow these messages to get into the hands of Team Baldoni. And essentially, they radically filed this protective order, like, no, you cannot get this. And then I told you that behind the scenes, Scott Swift, because Blake's lawyer allegedly implicitly threatened his daughter, said, we will give you these messages if you want to subpoena them, and told them specifically which messages that they had. And so it looks like they did not relinquish those messages immediately at Team Baldoni, but they've indicated that they're very willing to abide by any subpoena. And now Judge Lehman has ruled fair game, okay? And here is the reason why he is ruling fair game. Skylar, if we can pull up page 3 of his ruling, I think is where it is. Guys, don't mind my squint. I swear it's a light, and sometimes it's hard for me to see it. Okay, so he is saying, if you see, Lively alleges that Baldoni and Heath harassed her in numerous ways during work on It Ends With Us, and that her concerns about her behavior began, quote, early in pre-production and production process, and that she expressed these concerns in, quote, contemporaneous messages. He goes on to say, given that Lively has represented that Swift had knowledge of complaints or discussions about the working environment on the film, among other issues, the requests for messages with Swift regarding the film and this action are reasonably tailored to discover information that would prove or disprove Lively's harassment and retaliation claims. So this is really funny, because this is basically what's happening is she's getting her due justice in trying to represent that Taylor Swift was her dragon. And she loved to use Taylor Swift's name. She's name dropping her. Ryan Reynolds is name dropping her. They've been name dropping Taylor Swift to Justin Baldoni just to get whatever it is that they want. And you'll realize one day, said Ryan Reynolds, that there's a reason that Tay-Tay trusts her so much. And they're bringing Taylor to the house and having her look at the script. She's represented so much that Taylor Swift was involved with this movie one way or another. And in her initial filing, she said, I've got so many messages. I've got witnesses, contemporaneous messages that prove what I was feeling like at this time when this was going down. So you yourself, because you humble bragged the entire time about your closeness with Taylor Swift, one of your dragons, have now made her relevant. And I love that. I love that. Justice right there is sweet. It's like you grifted too close to the sun, baby girl, you know? And now Judge Lehman is going to allow it. And I cannot wait, because I said from the very beginning, whatever is in those messages, it completely has Blake Lively terrified. So terrified, in fact, that according to Scott Swift, she specifically asked Taylor Swift to delete some messages, and Taylor Swift would not have done that because she is not an idiot, okay? You can say what you want about her. That girl did not get to where she is at in life by being a dummy. And she would not have deleted them. She would have shown them to a lawyer, showed it to her PR, showed it to Daddy Swift, and they would have said, hold on, when somebody is asking you to commit a crime, you don't. And now we know that Scott Swift also said, here's the dates. These are the messages that you're looking for. And guys, what can I say here other than game on, game on. I am giddy. You should be giddy. And this does still feel to me like some justice for Justin. It really does. And it is sad that the New York Times is never held accountable for the lies that they tell. But I think that this case happening is good because there are so many people who, like me, and I'm including myself in this, grew up believing that they were the truth. Like that these were people were fighting the fourth. They represent the fourth estate. You know, the press exists so that we can keep the government in check. And now you recognize they are the government. And the question we should be asking ourselves is who then was powerful enough to have the New York Times do that to Justin, and why? Right? Because that person's got to be a big person. Maybe it's someone like Ari Emanuel. I could see him. He's got a pretty powerful family there, and Blake and Ryan were his clients. But whatever happened to Justin Baldoni, very powerful people were behind it. Very powerful people were able to get the ball rolling at the New York Times, to destroy him and to take away his publishing rights. And unfortunately, there's not going to be justice in regards to the New York Times. We're not going to find out who those people are, but there should still be justice against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. So that's all I'm going to say about that before we get into Tyler Perry. First, want to remind you guys about Preborn, because you know I love them. June 24th actually marks 3 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned. But here is the truth. Abortion has not gone away. In fact, it's gotten worse. Abortions are at a 10-year high. And here's why. The fight has actually moved from the courtroom to something that's so much more dangerous, which is people's homes. Today, more than 60% of abortions are happening through a pill that women are taking alone in fear without any support. And what happens next is so horrifying. And I think this is going to lead to mass lawsuits. Women are delivering their babies fully formed into toilets, onto bathroom floors. And these babies, they're learning in those moments, are not just tissue, they're human beings. And now they're gone. And let's be honest, that is not healthcare. That is trauma. These women are being traumatized. 11% of women who take the abortion pill face serious complications, and many are going to carry emotional scars for the rest of their lives. And that's why I support Preborn, because they're stepping in where I believe our culture is failing. They're giving women the truth, real practical financial support, and a chance to choose life. Preborn has already saved over 350,000 babies, and they cannot continue to do that sort of stuff without our help. And it's never been easier to help. You can give $28, and then you can double the chance that a mom will choose life for her baby and for herself. Donate now. Just go to preborn.com/Candace. Again, that's preborn.com/Candace. Also remind you guys about Field of Greens, because you can change your lifestyle and healthy habits. And sometimes that feels like it's a huge task, but if you're looking for a very easy and effective way to do it, one of the first things that you should ask yourself is, what supplement will actually promise me better health? What's the point of drinking green drinks and health supplements if you aren't 100% confident that they are going to improve your health? That's why you should check out Field of Greens. They have a better health promise, which makes it radically different. If you enjoy a delicious Field of Greens drink each day, then at your next checkup with your doctor, he will noticeably notice your improved health, or you're going to get your money back. My assistant Bella absolutely loves Field of Greens. It's her daily dose of wellness in a scoop, and it's more than just a supplement. It is the secret weapon for feeling great every single day. All the fruits and vegetables are doctor selected for a specific health benefit. Field of Greens is perfect for heart health, lungs, kidney, metabolism, even maintaining a healthy weight. One drink a day is all it takes. You're going to look and feel healthier with more energy. And I can get you started with 20% off and free shipping. All you have to do is visit fieldofgreens.com and use my code Candace. Again, that's fieldofgreens.com/Candace. All right, you guys, listen up. Tyler Perry is being sued. He's being sued by an actor on The Oval for sexual assault and harassment. And this is an actor who worked on this Tyler Perry created TV drama. He's alleging that Perry leveraged his industry power to repeatedly sexually assault and harass him while keeping him quiet. He filed the lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court, and that actor is Derek Dixon. There he is. He has appeared thus far on 85 episodes of the BET series, and he wants $260 million in damages. Part of this lawsuit, he's saying, quote, Mr. Perry took his success and power and used his considerable influence in the entertainment industry to create a coercive, sexually exploitive dynamic with Mr. Dixon, initially promising him career advancement and creative opportunities, such as producing his pilot and casting him in a show, only to subject him to escalating sexual harassment, assault, and battery, and professional retaliation. That is what the lawsuit says. And of course, Perry's attorney has come back and said that this is positively false, but some text messages have leaked. And here's what I'm going to say. People are surprised by this. My former producer, executive producer from when I was at the Daily Wire, texted me. She's like, oh my gosh, have you seen this? You have to cover this. And I read it, and I am being so serious. And I sometimes, Michael and my former producer, we have to kind of, the gap must be closed between my experience growing up as a Black girl and her experience growing up as a Southern white girl. And I go, is this a white versus Black person upbringing thing? Because she's shocked by this lawsuit because she's like, oh my gosh, can you believe Tyler Perry's gay? And I went, wait, there are people that think Tyler Perry is straight? Because I grew up when he was doing Medea, and we used to go to the salon and they used to sell Medea bootlegs. So you have a person that walks around with like a giant black garbage bag. I'm not kidding. They go into salons and they like sell a bootleg movies, bootleg plays, whatever. And Medea was like all the rave. And that's how I knew Tyler Perry. I knew Tyler Perry as cross-dressing as a woman, fantastic plays that he was doing, hilarious. And I never in a million years thought, like, I just always thought he was gay or thought that he was like openly gay. So then I find out as I'm reading this lawsuit via Michaelin that he has a wife or has a partner and he has a kid. And I'm going, okay, so this is why people are doubly shocked by this. I'm shocked because I'm just learning that there are people that are shocked that he's gay. And I'm also shocked at like people thinking that this is a surprise anymore. This is how the industry functions. Like, how could anyone think that Tyler Perry could climb to the top of Hollywood? And yes, he's done some amazing things, especially being someone that has sought to own his own studios, et cetera, et cetera. But Hollywood's a club and you got to be in it or you got to be out of it. And those of you who are in the book club and we're reading Hollywood Babylon together, you know what I'm talking about. It's always been a lavender club and you're in or you're out. And so I'm just going to say that I am shocked that people are shocked. We are just shocked at each other. There might be some cultural differences here. I just assumed that Tyler Perry, I thought he was openly gay. So this is here he is. This is very shocking. I am just completely shook by this. And listen, regarding this lawsuit, do I at all, obviously rather text messages, do I at all doubt that he's having relations? I mean, the text messages are super weird. Asking the guy if he's, guiltless while does he feel guiltless about sex? How can we help him be guiltless about sex? Here's the message. I'm going to read it. He writes, what's it going to take for you to have guiltless sex? Have y'all found that yet in therapy? And yes, it's the exact same kind of car, Geo Metro. And then this person writes back, giving up my religious guilt, becoming a Buddhist. That's so cool where you came from. And then he writes back to him, unfortunately, Derek, I have friends who are in their 50s and 60s who are still dealing with that. And it's sad. You can have freedom from religious guilt and still believe in Christ. It's very groomery is what I'm going to say. And it is why so many Christians are against sending their kids into Hollywood or getting them involved. It's like, how many people can go into Hollywood, whether they're at Nickelodeon or Disney, and come out with all of these traumas and saying that, hey, it's a big club. It's a big club in Hollywood and you're in or you're out. And so this is not shocking. Is this actor, by the way, can you look up Skylar for me? Derek, how old is Derek? Do I think that he was flirting with Tyler and sending the signs that this was okay because he wanted to climb the ladder in Hollywood? Of course I do. Of course I do. Do I think that he then saw a way and a means to like get what he wanted, which is a little bit of fame, and then kind of cash out by suing Tyler? Of course I do. Like you guys already know where I stand on this, what these people are doing in Hollywood. everyone knows what the casting couch is, but now we're kind of in an era where people who are kind of willing to maybe play the game a little bit or flirt, then pretend to be like totally like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. I just wanted to be an actor. It's like, why are you talking to Tyler Perry about your therapy sessions about whether or not you can have guiltless homosexual sex at all, right? How old is he? You guys looking this up? Yeah, well, I mean, he's in the movie. What's his last name? Derek? Somebody maybe in the chat will find it. It'll come up. Somebody in the chat, if you guys were putting you all on this, find out how old this actor Derek is, because I'm going to guess he's not like a Disney child. And it is just the casting couch. And everybody kind of is like, in my view, in Hollywood, like a pimp or a prostitute. So it's like, you're going to be a pimp, you're going to be a prostitute. And there have been so many people that have made that clear. So you, of course, should not be shocked by Tyler Perry being a part of the club. Okay, this person, nope, he's in his 30s, this person says. So that makes it even more ridiculous to me. I mean, you're going to tell me that in your 30s you don't have a way, and we can fact check that, so don't take that to the bank. But you're going to tell me that in your 30s you just like didn't have the wherewithal to be like, no, this is absolutely creepy right away, and I'm not talking to you about like my therapy sessions and my Christian guilt about homosexual sex. Like you want me to believe that? This person says 35 or 35. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is probably in my courtroom dismissed, because I find that to be completely ridiculous that this person some kind of victim. But of course what's going to happen is they're going to end up settling this case because Tyler Perry is not going to be want to be dragged through the press. And my guess is they did a little leak. Like those are some of the messages. His lawyers are just showing Tyler Perry they're serious. This is a shakedown. We've got more messages. If you don't want this to get more embarrassing, then settle. And Tyler Perry is likely going to settle. And here we are, guys. You know, if people actually abided by that Christianity, he wouldn't probably be in this circumstance in the first place. But what do I know? Oh, also wanted to tell you guys this. So this is kind of crazy. Just building on what we were talking about yesterday, different subject, obviously. It's just the astounding arrogance and hypocrisy of people that continue to support Israel. Like, I lied. I've been maimed and caricatured for speaking about what's happening in Gaza as they've bombed. How many hospitals have they actually bombed in Gaza? Like, we've got to be at like 16 hospitals. They've just been bombing hospitals, and they always go, there was a tunnel under this one, and they never prove if there was a tunnel under any hospital, right? And yesterday, Iran hits a hospital in Israel, and suddenly they are out crying in the streets. The Zionists are out crying in the streets. And I am sorry, but like Bibi Netanyahu on this tour doing his sad face going, oh my God, what kind of a savage bombs a hospital? What's happening? What is happening? We are like beyond parity. When they bomb hospitals, it's moral. When they invade countries, it's moral, okay? When people respond to them invading their country by bombing a hospital, it is the worst, most immoral, most savage thing that could ever happen. And don't you understand why we had to attack Iran? These savage religious fundamentalists retaliated by bombing a hospital. No, you got to look up. There's got to be a total number of hospitals that they bombed in Gaza. I got to look this up because it is, I couldn't believe it that this was even trending. Like, I just don't know what it is. They just really believe that they have a carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want in this world. And if anybody asks a question, they're going to go, look at your Bible. The Bible says the land of Israel is automatically holy. Whatever you do in Israel, it's fine. Whatever Jeffrey Epstein was doing, it's all good because he was doing it for the Israeli government. It makes me sick. It really does make me sick. It's like the idea here, by the way, if you follow this ridiculous logic, this dispensationalism, very modern logic here, it means that if Kim Jong-un like drops a nuke in Israel and takes over and moves a bunch of Koreans in Israel, then whatever Kim Jong-un does from that moment on, you can't critique because your Bible tells you you'll be blessed if you bless Kim Jong-un's Israel. Don't you get it? You cannot penetrate that logic. It's perfect logic. Kim Jong-un, if he takes over Israel, you must worship everything he does and you will be blessed because your Bible tells you that. That's exactly what Jesus meant. It means that whoever takes over that land at any moment, you will be blessed if you bless those people. It's nonsense. It is utter nonsense. And I'm just happy that people are realizing it because I just could not believe Bibi Netanyahu and his fake sad face outside of this hospital pretending like this is just the moral crime of the century that they've just been doing for 2 years straight in Gaza. and calling us all anti-Semites for caring and saying, why are you bombing every single hospital in Gaza? You're obviously doing that intentionally. Anyways, before I get to some of your comments, guys, I want to remind you about Pure Talk, because what if I told you that you could cut your cell phone bill in half and support a U.S. company that shares your values? Values like supporting our veterans, creating American jobs. What if I told you that you do not even have to sacrifice coverage to do that because you're going to be on America's most dependable 5G network? I'm talking about the only wireless company that I endorse, which is Pure Talk, a wireless company that is veteran-led and invests in a U.S. customer service team so that you have the best support possible. If you're with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, you can now join the hundreds of thousands who have successfully cut their cell phone bill in half. That's right, the average family saves over $1,000 a year when they make the switch. Pure Talk is mine and my family's cell phone company, and it can be yours too. You can switch in as little as 10 minutes when you go to puretalk.com/Owens with plans starting at just $25 a month. What are you waiting for? Go to puretalk.com/Owens and make the switch to Pure Talk, wireless by Americans for Americans. Also, we all drink coffee. You might as well drink 7 Weeks coffee because it's an American pro-life coffee company that's on a mission to fund the pro-life movement, one cup of coffee at a time. And if you want to know why they're called 7 Weeks, the answer is because at 7 weeks, a baby is the size of a coffee bean, and it's the same time a heartbeat is clearly detected on an ultrasound. That's why they donate 10% of every sale to support pregnancy care centers across the country. They've raised almost $1 million for these centers, and they've saved thousands of lives. And I can tell you the coffee is fantastic. It's mold-free, pesticide-free, shade-grown, low acid, and it's organically farmed. So it checks all the boxes. And right now you can help 7 Weeks make history through the $1 million for Life campaign. They're really close to reaching $1 million in donations to pro-life organizations across the country. So go ahead and head to 7weekscoffee.com and you'll save 15% forever when you subscribe and get a free gift as well. Plus, exclusively for my listeners, if you use code Candace at checkout, you'll get an extra 10% off your first order. That's a 25% total savings on your first order, plus your free gift. Remember, your order will directly help support a network of over 1,000 pro-life organizations across the U.S. Okay, guys, what are you guys thinking? I love looking at your chat. You guys are always so fun in the chat, in the live chat. Let's get into some of your comments here. First up, we have Top 5. He said, I've got to say that Taylor Swift's best song is Anti-Hero, where she admits that she is the problem. I've actually never heard that song. I did stop at the Lover album because I said, like I told you, London Boy was a bop, and I felt comfortable there. And I never heard it, but maybe I will listen to it. But yeah, she admits that she's the problem in a few of her songs, actually. Marzi writes, I think Taylor Swift has something to hide in the whole Blake and Ryan drama. I don't want to sound too crazy, but I think she's a mean girl. There is no way that her PR team would allow something like this to ruin her image. Yeah, I think that was why they wanted to establish communication with Justin Baldoni's team and say, like, here's what we're willing to give you, because this is stuff that's not going to blemish her. It's probably going to blemish just Blake Lively. And they don't want to be dragged into this and have other messages that could potentially get, in the mix. They're like, here is exactly what you're looking for. Everything else is off the table. And it's smart. This was a very smart thing for them to do. And we know that there's got to be something quote unquote problematic about Taylor Swift, because if we are to believe Scott Swift, if we are to believe that that they threatened Taylor Swift and said, remind your client that we have 10 years of friendship and text messages at our disposal, that means that they've got some things to embarrass Taylor Swift. And maybe it's just talking about guys, who she likes, whatever it is. But they believe that it's something that's going to ruin her image, which, by the way, I want to be very clear, I'm very team Taylor Swift on that. That is a dirty, nasty game to play with friends. Doesn't shock me at all, because Ryan seems to me like he has a lot of repressed anger. Dr. Holly writes, Candace, is there any precedent I can use to avoid getting my son the Tdap and meningitis vaccine boosters before he goes to 7th grade here in CT? They are sending letters saying that he's out of compliance and won't be allowed to attend school or athletics, and he plays football, lacrosse, and basketball. Also, my husband and I can't afford to stay home and homeschool with him. It's so funny you bring that up, because my sister is pulling her kid out of school right now. He goes to school in Connecticut, and he's only 5 years old, and she was very uncomfortable with the conditioning that was happening. He is 5 years old in the classroom. The ADL has somehow received access to classrooms, and they are already teaching these kids about anti-Semitism. She's like, this is weird. My sister's married to a guy that's half Jewish. She's like, what is this? I don't want my kids thinking like this. And she has changed around her entire life to be able to homeschool. I'm just like very amazed at my sister's ability to do this. She's now getting up at 4 a.m. to make this work. She's an accountant, and it's a lot of work. And they are not, by any stretch of an imagination, a wealthy family, but she wanted to adapt her life for her children and to make sure that she wasn't giving them over. And she also made a decision not to vax her second child. after finally listening to her little sister, and didn't want to play the game with the schools owning her children. And so there's a network of moms in Connecticut that are standing up to these to big pharma. My sister is among them, and she told me that there were these meetings, like these moms that are homeschooling. I think there are also some moms that might be thinking about coming together to micro school, meaning that you could link up with a mom that is homeschooling, and you could pay for a teacher to teach both of your kids, so it's cheaper, so that somebody else is homeschooling your kids. But where there is a will, there is a way. And if you genuinely do not want to subject your child to the Tdap, and you shouldn't, please just go watch my series. I don't want to get in trouble here on YouTube, but every mother should watch my vaccine series available at CandaceOwens.com. The combination shots, in my view, are the big no. MMR, Tdap, DTaP, all of them. And so, like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. So get in touch with all the parents in Connecticut that are kind of networking at this moment. Debert Sanchez writes, "Hey Candace, what would you say is the ultimate end goal of whoever is behind all the lying and trying to control the people through state news and all these initiatives? Thank you and love your show." You answered the question. Controlling the people, controlling the masses. When you want war, you're not going to send your kids if you're an elitist. So you need to be able to effectively propagandize to get people fired up. I mean, really understanding like Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, and how they knew that psychology was the means to do it, and what efforts they made to test their psychological theories of can we make all Americans hate Germans? The propaganda campaigns during World War II, which was led by Edward Bernays, to make all Americans hate Germans. Fascinating to learn about the history of that. To make Americans eat breakfast. He was behind campaigns to make women smoke cigarettes. They've done these things in lockstep with Big Pharma, with the big war, and they have always been effective. Civil rights movements, getting people, to get out and riot and protest when they want them to, but also get people to stay at home. Stay at home, save lives. You love your grandma, right? We're all in this together. That is psychology that they have thought through, and it is always to impart some sort of a mass formation psychosis upon the public, whether it's to get you to roll up your arm and get a vaccine, and to make you terrified, to make you walk with 6 feet social distance, or let your grandma die alone. There is always an end, and it usually is to empower the government, always, whatever the government is trying, whatever initiative the government has at any given time, they are trying to fulfill. Lastly, Len Smith writes, "Hey Candace, have you looked into Tory Lanez case recently? I remember your thoughts on it a few years ago, and it seems like there's still some injustice happening with him now." Okay, so I will say I never did a super deep dive on that case, and I'm kind of surprised how many people keep telling me that I got it wrong and that he didn't shoot her that night. I know she was shot. I know that the doctor testified they pulled the bullets out of her, or the bullet fragments out of her foot. It would be pretty difficult to get a doctor, I think, to go on record and be willing to lose his license over a couple of people fighting in a car. Now, if there's a reason that you think that Tory Lanez or a doctor would have lied, or if you're saying to me that somebody else shot Megan Thee Stallion and I missed that, please send it to me. You guys can always send me tips at CandaceOwens.com. You guys know that I absolutely always go into that inbox and see what you guys are sending me. I don't know enough about that, is what I'll say. I thought that I had it right, but I'm always happy to be proven wrong with more information. So send it over to tips at CandaceOwens.com. All right, you guys, we will see you on Monday, I think. And I know I said I was going to give you the Russell Brand interview, but I'm going to bump that to next week because I promised that I would provide the updates, and the Taylor Swift messages were just too good to leave alone. So we'll see you on Monday.